Best and worst of the Super Bowl ads, and the first one that comes to mind is the Clint Eastwood ad for Chrysler. Dan Henninger, our Wonderland columnist, here to talk about it. Thanks for being here, Dan.
Good to be here.
So the famous Clint Eastwood ad, in some ways I think you'd have to say it was the best because it's Clint Eastwood and he's got a very compelling voice. But first we're gonna show a clip here, and this it's a long ad, but we're gonna pick it up. Clint has been talking about how it's halftime in America, and we've had our struggles, but now it's kind of a pep talk that uses the possible Detroit rebound for inspiration here. And so here's the Clint Eastwood ad for Chrysler in the Super Bowl.
This isn't a game. The people of Detroit know a little something about this. They almost lost everything. But we all pulled together. Now Motor City is fighting again. I've seen a lot of tough eras, a lot of downturns in my life, and times when we didn't understand each other. It seems that we've lost our heart at times. The fog of division, discord, and blame made it hard to see what lies ahead. But after those trials, we all rallied around what was right and acted as one. Because that's what we do. We find a way through tough times, and if we can't find a way, then we'll make one. All that matters now is what's ahead. How do we come from behind? How do we come together? And how do we win? Detroit's showing us it can be done. And what's true about them is true about all of us. This country can't be knocked out with one punch. We get right back up again, and when we do, the world's gonna hear the roar of our engines. Yeah, it's halftime America, and our second half's about to begin.
Okay, so it's inspiring stuff. It's Clint Eastwood talking about the world's going to hear the roar of our engines.
Yeah.
But if you kind of go past the emotion into the content of what he's saying, we all pulled together, we rallied around, and is he saying the auto bailouts were a good idea, that they've been good for the country?
Well, it would be nice if an economy were a football game, but unfortunately it's a little more complicated than that. I mean, this is either the best ad in the Super Bowl or the worst ad. It kind of depends on your political point of view. Most people thought it was fundamentally a pro-Obama ad. And I think to a great extent it was. So I don't know. Last October, Clint Eastwood was saying he was against auto bailouts. Now he's doing this ad. Maybe he's been watching too many Republican presidential debates and he's decided they're hopeless. But here he is with this strange ad. Now, the ironic thing is, I thought when I started to see it, Clint's got this soft spot in his heart because he did Gran Torino, the movie, based in Detroit. Ironically, that guy that he played was a former Ford worker. Ford was the one company that didn't take the bailout, all right? So now he's saying that GM, or just Chrysler in his case, though, remember one of the other terrific ads was one for General Motors where the car survives the apocalypse.
Right.
And then there's this zinger at the end at Ford, who again didn't take the bailout money. So in a sense, both Chrysler and GM are crowing about having survived with all of this taxpayer bailout, and they're kind of politicizing the bailout in advance of the election. The question is, to what extent does that ad comport with reality?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue maybe it was the best and the worst ad. The best because obviously the most compelling message. It's Clint Eastwood. I guess he's not going to act in movies anymore. He thinks he's too old. I disagree. He's very compelling. But the worst in that this sense of that it does seem to say that the bailouts were positive. Even for Detroit, it seems to me what you really want, if you want long-term job creation, is allowing companies to fail and new companies to succeed. When he talks about how Detroit almost lost everything, can you really say that years on from now they'll be better off that the government kept these two giants in business as opposed to perhaps freeing up those assets to do more productive things?
A couple of points about this, James. First of all, the big three in Detroit were in trouble long before the financial crisis hit in 2008, which is what this is pegged to. They were close to bankruptcy for years. And it was because of the gold-plated labor agreements that the Big Three signed. It was because of all the legacy costs they had for pensions and health care. And they came close to bankruptcy several times. They were already doing negotiations with the unions. And there's no doubt that when the financial crisis hit, it created a very severe problem for them. But the question then was raised was, these two companies got a taxpayer bailout of about $50 billion. Why these two and not other companies that get into similar kinds of problems? And it was because of the clout of the labor unions. Now, the second point to make is, let's say, first of all, GM and Chrysler could have gone into a bankruptcy and a restructuring and let a bankruptcy court handle it. And it would have come out a little bit differently, perhaps, but it wasn't absolutely certain that those companies were going to go out of business. But if they had gone out of business, does that mean that people would stop buying the cars that they might have sold? Those car purchases would have gone to other companies inside the United States, like Ford or all the others that were advertising on the Super Bowl.
The other is going through a Chapter 11, a normal process, not one where the government is forcing a certain outcome. Maybe they'd be even better off. Maybe they'd be more profitable because they would have cut even more costs. Who knows? I mean, it's very clear, though, that I find it odd. If you think about how do we, at halftime, how do we come out and play a big second half of the U.S. economy? I hope the message is not, we need to inject more money into more large corporations. I mean, the fact that they're doing well versus a Solyndra doesn't mean this model works.
Clint Eastwood's ad is essentially a preview of what Barack Obama is going to argue in the campaign. When he keeps talking about we and doing everything together, essentially he means the government. I mean, we can't all literally help everyone.
Right.
The only way we can do that is through government spending in some sort of, obvious sense. But that is just, the question remains whether that is the best way to restructure labor costs and the growth needs of the American economy. And let me give one quick example. Honda, Japanese auto company, right?
Right.
They have just spent the last year opening a new plant in Indiana. That plant hires people who live within a 2-hour drive of the plant in Indiana or Ohio, all Americans. It also buys parts from 225 U.S. and Canadian companies in 6 different states, all of which are employing U.S. citizens. So there's no reason to believe that if GM and Chrysler had become smaller, that those jobs would not have simply transferred elsewhere in the United States and been taken by U.S. citizens.
Yeah, I think that's the game plan for the second half. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.